Thank you for stopping by GardenStateWeather.com and GardenStateWeather.blogspot.com, providing superior forecasting for the Northern Mid-Atlantic region. This is the extended video forecast discussion part 2 for the Northern Mid-Atlantic region. In the first edition on Sunday night, we talked about basically the ENSO, which is our El Nino Southern Ice Oscillation Index, our ocean temperatures across the globe, and we also got into some of the indexes, or the PNA, and we'll get into the NAO, the North Atlantic Ice Oscillation, the Arctic Ice Oscillation, and where the models are taking all of this energy in the branches here. We'll talk about the EPO and some of the other indices that are struggling. The models are definitely struggling in this pattern change that's evolving across the contiguous United States and actually the Northern Hemisphere as a whole as well. Okay, what we're going to do this evening in the forecast discussion is talk about some of these teleconnections with the PNA, which is the Pacific North Atlantic Ice Oscillation, or Pacific North American Ice Oscillation rather, the North American Ice Oscillation Index, and the Western Pacific Ice Oscillation Index, and the EPO Index. These are all being provided from NOAA's Earth System Research Laboratory, called ESRL, the Physical Sciences Division, PSD. And we'll show you what these mean in the forecast going ahead by temperatures and what these composites do when they're in these positions. Right now, the PNA index right now is nearly neutral to slightly below. It's expected to continue to go into the negative tank, which means more of a trough here south of the Aleutian Islands rather than a ridge. And it's forecast to come up again by January 6th and remain, but still remain in the threshold below normal. Below the positive state. So all of this is a negative PNA, which is not good for eastern troughs in the United States. The next index that we'll look at is the North Atlantic Ice Oscillation Index, which we would want to find in a slightly neutral to negative state. All of the composites here from December 29th through January 12th over about a 14-15 day period here show the NAO index still in a positive. That does not allow for blocking over Greenland or south of Nova Scotia, and means that transports of storm systems are fleeting on the eastern seaboard with very little blocking signatures showing up. Western Pacific Ice Oscillation Index is -2, coming up to near neutral by the time we get to around the 12th of January. This index here is not as important as some of the other ones, but we'll talk about that in a moment. And the EPO, this one is important. It is really tanked here. On December 29th, it's down to about 300 standards below where it should be. But the observations show in the forecast modeling that the EPO index will continue to weaken its influences. And this is probably the strongest correlation to the problem we're having, where the Pacific right now, jet stream, is in the polar regions is so strong across Eastern Asia and Japan and into northwestern America as a result of this index being so low by such strong standard deviations. But it's going to be forecasted to be coming up to a reasonable level. Still negative. We do want to continue to see a negative, but we want to see the jet stream fluctuations over the northern Pacific begin to weaken a little bit so that more buckling can take place. Now, when the Pacific North Atlantic Oscillation is in a negative phase, the composite temperature anomalies from MadUSWeather.com for January, February, March, and April show a much cooler connection to the air mass and temperature anomalies, much cooler than normal by 2 to 6 degrees Celsius. Standard deviations below normal here across the northern plains. And the central and eastern portions of the United States, including the northern mid-Atlantic, are at a near neutral phase here with very little contribution here, and a much warmer southeast ridge, a Sargasso Sea ridge, showing temperature anomalies on the warm side during the month of January. When we look at the PNA continuing to stay negative in February, which it probably will not at that point, we're still looking for negative anomalies in the north and neutral to slightly warm conditions across the central plains and down through the southeastern and south central United States. And we talked about the North Atlantic ice oscillation in the previous forecast and the one before that. That's the blocking signature that we normally see with high pressure ridge building over Greenland and Nova Scotia. And when we don't have that, we have a positive phase of the North Atlantic ice oscillation with very little blocking. The temperature composites for the years from 1981 all the way to 2010, with a number of the years where the NAO was positive during the month of January, we find well above normal temperatures all across the eastern seaboard, and that also continues during the month of February, being provided the fact that the NAO remains in a positive state. Western Pacific ice oscillation in a negative fashion through the early part of January, being forecasted by the Physical Sciences Division at the Earth Systems Research Laboratory, part of NOAA. This is what the composite temperature anomalies look like for the years given, where the WPO was negative across the contiguous United States, dating all the way back to some of the years here, 2011 back to 1950. We can find the temperature anomalies here with us in a negative fashion remain generally between 2 to 4 degrees below normal, which would include January and the month of February. But the data right now that we're looking at only supports this to the beginning of the month of January. And one of the stronger contributors here is the strong negative values of the Eastern Pacific oscillation, allowing for that jet couplet to be much stronger over the Northern Pacific, but it's showing signs of weakening in some of the data that we just looked at closer to the early to the mid part of January. But right now, in a negative state, it really does call for temperatures to be generally 2 to 4 degrees below normal during the month of January along the eastern seaboard here, specifically the northeastern Atlantic and mid-Atlantic area here, and also into February too. So we're hedging towards this being the main problem right now, but it's probably not the only solution here or only a driver here in the pattern, but it could be a major one right now. And the latest El Nino situation, the Nino region sea surface temperature departures from recent evolution, and this is being updated every Monday, and it's been updated today from the Climate Prediction Center. We're still at about almost a degree Celsius, almost 1 degree Celsius in Niños 4, which continues to shrug off just a little bit. A little bit of a dropping here in regions 3.4, but still, and also in the Central Pacific regions 3 here, we're still at and above the threshold for El Nino. So this continues to look like a west-based El Nino. Meanwhile, the regions here in 1.2 near South America continue to fall off rather rapidly and precipitably. And the new GFS parallel, which is still not ready for operational use yet, but still we use it anyway. It's the NCEP GFS. It's the new parallel model. This is the North Atlantic oscillation forecast. We're slightly below normal right now, hedging up towards a positive state. Once again, this is not a good sign, and even the 12Z run and the latest 18Z run are still wavering here. The normal should be somewhere down here in the neutral position to negative, but we're not there. In a previous forecast, one of the other teleconnection indices we talked about was the Arctic ice oscillation. We'd like to see this in the negative. The forecast going forward here by all the model guidance from last night, the GFS parallel last night, early this morning, mid-morning, and late this afternoon continues to waver on the positive side. This looks a lot more encouraging. The parallel GFS model showing the North American pattern, the PNA here. We're in a negative state now, which we need to switch around to a positive state. It looks like it's hedging up towards that during this time frame. That could mean that the evolution of the EPO is also changing in concert with this. That means that we'll find more buckling, more ridging off the west coast, and then more troughing of developing across the eastern United States if this pattern holds true. GFS parallel Eastern Pacific oscillation, I said that we were in the tank here and really tanking down by deviations. Now, we showed you the PSD sites calculations on the EPO, and this is the GFS parallels mode. I'd like you to follow this because we're going into the tank here by January 1st. It's probably overwhelmingly too low here by five deviations below normal. And as we get towards, well, as we get towards the beginning of January and then up here. We're still in the negative, but we want this to weaken. And that's what the model data, even the GFS parallel, is showing, that it's going to weaken some but still stay in the negative. We want the Eastern Pacific Oscillation to be negative to get the troughs to buckle and the trough axis here in the eastern United States to become more pronounced. So it does look like it's hedging in that direction, but still there's quite a high volatility here between each model run during as they struggle, as the model continues to struggle with this. Okay, so we looked at quite a lot of teleconnection data, and we also looked at satellite data. We looked at sea surface temperatures, the stratosphere. Where are we going with this forecast? All of these are a little bit convoluted for many people to understand, but we're going to delve into the ensemble models and the models forecasting going ahead into the first month of January and see where things are going to lie. I'd like to take some time and cut these videos to make them a little bit shorter, more presentable for people. Part 3 video forecast discussion will be probably cut at some point during tonight, and that's where we're going to get into the model evolution of where the forecast is going and the prospects that it could bring in terms of wintry precipitation to the eastern United States. That will be done in Part 3. So this concludes Part 2 of the extended video forecast discussion. Thanks for stopping by for Garden State Weather and GardenStateWeather.blogspot.com. I'm forecaster Robert Smith. I'll visit you later this evening or overnight tonight with the Part 3 and final representation of the extended video forecast discussion.